it's actually happening. Oh boy, you guys wouldn't believe how many times I've shot this intro, but this is the video review for Transformers Kingdom Commander Class Rodimus Prime, and this guy here may just be one of the biggest game changers for Hasbro and Takara Tomy going forward. This guy, honestly, is everything I could have wished for and more. Now, like many of you, I was rather skeptical of this character actually being put in the Commander Class price point, especially considering that the last figures we got were Jetfire and Skylynx, both of which were huge as far as scale is concerned. Rodimus is a normal sized character, you know, roughly Voyager, maybe Leader if you are pushing it, but oh boy, I was completely wrong to be skeptical about this guy, as he may just be my favourite War for Cybertron figure so far. He's most certainly one of the best engineered and well built figures, and I really hope I'll be able to show you that in the transformation sequence. So we've got so much to cover in this video, let's get straight into it. So here we have Rodimus Prime in his Winnebago Alt mode, complete with the trailer, and this is a massive piece in itself. I'll bring out some comparisons later on in the video, but you can see here that it does take up quite a considerable amount of room in my review station. The trailer itself is a huge unit, and they literally have given this guy all of the bells and whistles that you would want from a Rodimus Prime figure. You can see that as far as paint is concerned, we've got a mix of yellow and orange here at the top with that Autoboy insignia, some fantastic looking sculpt work as well. Flipping here to the side, we've got that black pinstriping around the fantastic looking Rodimus flames, and you can see a mixture of yellow and orange. We have got the silver smokestacks. The only area which I'm not too thrilled about is this gap. I do wish they found a way to actually take this and collapse this down once you had shot Rodimus into the trailer, but as it stands, it's not the end of the world, but it is something I would have liked to have seen perfected. You can see some nice red paint here on the side. All of the wheels are completely filled out. We've got no ugly mushroom pegs, which is awesome to see. The trailer is not hollow at all. Everything from the underside is completely filled out as well, and from what I can tell, the wheels are in fact pinned on, so do roll really freely along the ground, which I'll demonstrate later on into the video. You can see how Rodimus does slide in there. We'll detach him later on once we've gone through some of the trailer comparisons in the video, and I think he looks really cool. I like how these smokestacks do appear as if though they are connecting onto the actual Rodimus smokestacks themselves, and as we flip here to the other side, it is exactly the same as what we just took a look at. That paint and sculpt work really is impressive, and we have what I like to call various different mech tech ports scattered all the way throughout the figure for you to add some of his accessories on, blast effects, or any of your other War for Cybertron figure accessories. So let's get into some comparisons. Here we have Rodimus Prime compared next to the previous Rodimus Prime figure, that being the Power of the Prime's leader figure, and I was very surprised to see the Commander Class figure actually being so much bigger than this guy. This figure came out in a time where leaders were roughly what we had all come to know and love. They were a lot bigger than your standard Voyagers, and we're not just Voyager figures with additional accessories like we've seen from some of the War for Cybertron figures, and you can see that Rodimus, complete with the trailer, is quite a bit bigger than compared to this leader figure, and I think that the only area that this guy actually does better is the smokestacks. I prefer how these ones look a little more adjoining when in comparison to this one, which does have the cut, but other than that, from every other angle, the Commander Class figure wins hands down, as you would expect from, of course, a figure which is a lot more expensive. And here, for just one more side-by-side comparison, you can once again see how that Commander Class figure definitely is a lot bigger than this old leader figure. Here for another trailer and truck comparison, we've got Earthrise Optimus Prime, the guy who passes the mantle down to Rodimus Prime. You can see here that the scale is pretty decent in my opinion. Of course, Optimus is quite a big truck, but Rodimus is just bigger as far as the nose section of the vehicle is concerned. And of course, Optimus is a flat-nosed truck, so I think this here is pretty spot on. Now we can begin actually detaching Rodimus. Now, in order to do this, I would recommend taking here at this orange section, pulling down ever so slightly, and then pulling forwards, as that will release the spring-loaded mechanism here, which does in fact latch onto this tab. Now, before we check him out, we'll very quickly go over the trailer. The trailer is completely filled out. It doesn't feel light or hollow at all. You can see every single aspect of this is really blocked out, and it is a very weighty piece. Now, in order to actually access some of the components, you come here to the back, hinge this section up, and it actually has proper die-cast pins here at the top, acting as hydraulics, which is such a nice attention to detail. We can then drop this modular attachment section down for you to attach onto some of those weaponizers from Earthrise and Siege, and you can see there the huge turret. Now, in order to actually access the main trailer itself, you're going to want to spin around here to the front and just split the two halves, as you would with pretty much all of these trailers, and then we can proceed to take this section here, hinge this section down, take this piece, bring this out, and that is the trailer completely opened up, and you can see how many of those mech tech ports we have here. Honestly, it's a little overkill. I can't imagine that you would put that many accessories on this trailer, but if you wanted to, you could certainly do so. And here we have the massive turret. Now, we'll take a look at this more later on in the video, but this can be ratcheted up and down. You can open the shield blockers. You can actually remove this if you were so inclined to do so. Fold this 5mm peg in order to give you the impression that it is rolling around on treads. And it's a really, really nice looking piece. You can see some really awesome black singe detailing at the front in order to make it look as if though it's been firing down Decepticons. You can see some awesome metallic silver. Really nice looking sculpt work on this particular piece. You've got the handles that Rodimus would hold, or pretty much any of the characters could hold. And you've got some exceptional looking sculpt work here, such as the shield blockers, as well as all of this sculpted in detail. We'll set this here off to the side and come back to the trailer. So some of the hidden cavities where you can store away some of the accessories are in fact here. So for the trailer mode, you can hinge this section down, put a few accessories in there. Quite honestly, I haven't really found many that can fit in there. The only ones that I can see are the actual Matrix of Leadership blast, as well as the blast effects that the figure does come packaged with. And I guess you could also throw in the Matrix if you didn't want that holstered in Rodimus's chest. We also do get a secondary compartment, so just collapsing all of this back in upon itself. You'll want to come here to the underside, slide this section out, and you can see how we do have some slots under there for you to peg in some various different accessories. I imagine the Matrix Blast can peg in here just to demonstrate that. You can see how it's got 2 tabs on the back that you can just snap in there, and you can peg in some of the other blast effects if you're so inclined to do so. But really and truly, I haven't really found much of a use for these, to be completely honest with you. They are just gimmicks, I guess, in order to make the trailer a little more interesting. But on its own, I think it's awesome, and it definitely does play quite a big role when getting Rodimus in robot mode, especially if you want to recreate a very awesome diorama with that turret. So we'll set this here off to the side for now, and we shall bring in Rodimus Prime himself. And now this figure in its own is awesome. Now I can definitely see them perhaps releasing this later down the line in a leader class package. This guy is very hefty, much like Kingdom Galvatron, so it definitely does warrant that price point, and there is a lot of engineering that actually goes into him. You can see on the underside, this guy has got so many different joints, so many different pins, so many different screws. Honestly, they went all out with this figure and really didn't skimp out at all. Besides the back, I'm not a massive fan of how the feet do just hang out here. It would have been awesome if they could have found a slightly better way to conceal them. It doesn't look terrible by any stretch of the imagination, and once you do have this pegged into the trailer, it's pretty much impossible to see. But I do wish perhaps they could have cleaned this up a little better. But as far as this is concerned, super nice metallic silver here for the stacks. You can see the wheels are all completely filled out, so none of those ugly mushroom pegs. We've got various different MechTech ports here on the sides, as well as this yellow fin with this orange section, which has been detailed and sculpted really, really nicely. You can see some superb sculpt work on the actual top section, as well as this awesome metallic blue smoky plastic that they've used for the windscreen, and even that's got some nice sculpt work in, so it looks quite interesting. Unfortunately, I've tried my absolute best to peg these tabs into these slots, but they just do not want to go in there at all. But it doesn't look too bad from a side perspective. What I will mention, however, is that this guy will really only roll on a dead flat surface due to the way he transforms. This section cannot be compressed any further and does have a tendency to rub on the ground, especially if you have a surface which is slightly more rounded, like my review station here. So that is something to be cautious of. But other than that, he compacts really nice and tidily. Here he is from a front perspective once more. You can see looking super, super cool. And for some comparisons, here we have both the Power of the Prime's hot rod without the trailer attachments and the 86 movie hot rod. And you can see that the new Commander class Rodimus certainly is a lot bigger than both of these guys. As mentioned, he's more along the lines of an actual Voyager / leader class figure by War for Cybertron standards. But with that trailer, definitely warrants that Commander class price point. You can see how significantly bigger he is than this guy as far as height and width is concerned. And just bringing the old hot rod in for a comparison, you can see that these guys are roughly in the same scale, to be quite honest. But this new Kingdom version definitely has the height and a lot more sculpted in surface detailing. Some of the weapon storage options that you have here for Rodimus are as follows. So we can take the stack blaster. You can see 2 5mm pegs that will peg into these ports here on the side. So just snap that there into place, and we can also take the blast effects. Don't worry, I shall cover all of the accessories in more detail when we actually get him in robot mode, as there really isn't much point of showing them here in vehicle mode. So that's quite a cool display. And we can also flip here to the underside, take the Sword of Primus, and you can see 2 tabs here and here that these slots will in fact facilitate. Much like I mentioned when we took a look at the vehicle itself, this section barely does clear the ground. So with the sword attached, you are looking at very minimal clearance, but if you have it on a dead flat surface, it really shouldn't be an issue at all. But getting into transformation itself, oh boy, are there some neat tricks that this guy has up his sleeve. So to begin with, you're going to want to turn your attention here to the front and actually compress these wheels so that they sit closer to this front section. So just to demonstrate, you want to push some pressure on this black section, which will just snap that into place and stop these from rolling. That's super, super awesome. Repeat the same process here on this side. So just snap that there into place just so that it sits slightly more cleaner and actually looks as if though it's a part of this red sculpt than actually being a fully functioning wheel. We'll then turn here to the side, pull this out to the side, and repeat the same process for this region. We can then take this entire back section, disengage that, spin this around like so. You'll then want to come here to the arms, detach the smokestacks, and repeat the same process and pull all of this here out to the side just like this. We can then turn our attention to the underside. You'll want to disengage the windscreen from the chest piece, pull this section forwards, and then these tiny pieces, much like Studio Series Hot Rod, will in fact fold in just like this. I maybe would have liked to have seen these on pins, as these do have a tendency to pop off, but really that is just a minor critique. We can then lift this up, And repeat the same process here for this side, which will then allow you to compress this here, rotate all the way around, drop this section down, and then this is in fact on a mushroom peg, so this in itself will also rotate around so that the front is now facing the back. Really cool engineering. We also have a tab here that will peg into this slot, so align this up appropriately, peg that in there. We can then come to the arms. You're going to want to straighten out these joints, and this tab will peg into that slot. So snap that in there, and come here to this side and repeat the exact same process. So just straighten that joint out, snap that in there as well. Now for this tab is going to peg into this slot, but before we do that, you're going to want to ensure that this section here, with this tiny little groove, is in fact going to tab into this region. So bring this down, apply some pressure until that does shoot itself in there, and then it's just a matter of pushing this to the back and locking that in there, giving that all a nice squeeze so that everything is tapped in securely. We can then come here to the arms, extend them out until they click into place, lift this section up, bring this around and rotate that section, rotate the smokestack here, and this section is going to peg into this tab, so hinge that around, and then finally this piece here will snap along the side of the arm like so, and come here and repeat the exact same process. So pull this section out until it clicks into place, fold this out, bring this around, rotate the smokestack, come here to the underside and snap that into place, and then snap that section into place, and you can see this guy's really coming together quite nicely. Spin your attention here to the underside, pull the feet out slightly. We can then take the two halves, split those, take this back section, pull this out, and repeat the same process here for this side. And then much like Studio Series Hot Rod, extend all of these up like so on the knee joints, so bring that all the way up. For this, compress much like we did for the front wheels, so take this and snap that into place, and this is in fact going to groove into this slot, so just bring this section back, shoot that in there, and you can see how it really nicely fills that out. We can then snap that into place, fold out the front of the toe, spin your attention here to this side and repeat the same process, so snap that into place, port that in there, snap that in, bring this section around, and there we have a Rodimus Prime from Transformers Kingdom, fully transformed up, and oh my goodness, is this guy so terrific. I mean, come on, this is amazing. As you could probably see from that transformation sequence, some of the steps are really just an evolution of Studio Series Hot Rod, as they really should be, considering this guy is an evolution of Hot Rod himself, but really fantastic conversion. I did see somewhere online that the designers did invest as much as they could in the conversion in order to make up for perhaps a slightly smaller figure for the Commander class line, and they absolutely have. I would really say this guy is literally masterpiece. I know I throw that term around quite a lot, and I've seen others do it, but this guy really is a masterpiece figure. He's so awesome. I've always actually said that Commander class is essentially masterpiece at the mass retail price point, and I completely stand by that, even more so here with Rodimus. So let's get straight into the details. The head sculpt I've seen is the topic of controversy online. Personally, I actually quite like it. I think it adds a rather wise look to the character, and of course he's a lot more mature than Hot Rod this time around, and I think the sculpt work looks superb. You can see some awesome definition there to the cheekbones, the nose, as well as the eyes, and the chin and the mouth too have also been clearly defined with a superb metallic silver. The actual helmet design too looks awesome. I love how they have in fact found a way to give us a darker, more smoky red for the crest, as well as some lighter shade of red around the outer section. That's really awesome and is such a nice attention to detail. I'm actually quite unsure as to how they've managed to achieve it. I think it's paint and a mixture of cast plastic, but regardless, it's superb looking. You can see even at the back we've got some nice sculpt work. The torso region I think looks excellent. This is in fact the actual hood of the vehicle, so awesome to see no faux pieces unlike SS Hot Rod. You can see some awesome flame detailing as well as that Autobot insignia. The front headlights picked out in a nice yellow. Taking a look here at the arms, I think the detail on these looks superb. The subtle touches of actually compressing these in so they could sit closer to this upper shoulder section is just such a nice attention to detail. You can see some nice silver highlights here at the top. The smokestacks on the sides, the orange, the yellows, and the fingers are superb. Now, we'll go more into these when we cover articulation, but wow, check out the sculpt work and the detail on these. These have turned out so nicely, and articulated fingers is something I'm hoping we see across the board for all mainline figures from Voyager upwards. So Voyager, Leader, and Commander, I hope going forwards all have articulated fingers, as that is a really nice feature to have on your figures. You can see here for the lower section, superb looking variation of paint, lighter shades of red, darker shades of red, much like the head sculpt. The entire thigh section has been completely painted in a really nice orange. I think the colour match is pretty much spot on to what we saw in the animation. It would have been cool if they could have actually given us orange orange knee joints, but I believe I saw somewhere online that Hasbro can't use cast orange or cast yellow joints on figures as the plastic isn't as strong as grey plastic, so that's not an issue for me. You can see the fin here at the back, or the spoiler. I think nice sculpt work on that. You can see even here some really cool details from where these panels flip from vehicle mode. They've completely sculpted the interior of these, which is super, super awesome. And the back section of the legs have all turned out so well. No hollow spaces on this guy. Superb looking surface detailing here, such as all of this detail. Looks so, so awesome. And then finally, of course, we've got the feet. Turning to Rodimus's articulation, this is where he really excels over pretty much all of the other mainline releases. So we get a ball joint here at the head, which can look up, down, tilt side to side, rotate left to right. We also do get a hinge joint at the neck, so you can utilize both of these joints in order to get a terrific range of motion. We get butterfly joints here at the arms, which can hinge forwards and backwards, as well as it can also hinge up and down at the shoulders. Full rotation here. We get a full rotation at the actual bicep section, which is really awesome. Double jointed elbows, which can bend to a terrific degree. We get a hinge joint here at the wrist, which you do not need for transformation. This is solely for robot mode purposes. And the fingers are individually articulated. So we get an individual joint here for the index finger, allowing you to recreate that classic scene where, of course, Rodimus, or Hot Rod, tells Galvatron, "It's the end of the line, Galvatron," which is so, so awesome. Really nice attention to detail. And these fingers are joined at 2 pins, so you've got a pin joint here and a pin joint here, which just completely holds those 3 together. We do get a waist joint here, which can rotate side to side. It is slightly hindered due to the back kibble. It would have been awesome if they could have actually given this guy an ab crunch, but that is a minor critique. The legs can kick forwards that far, as well as can kick back to that far. We also get hinge joints here on these skirt pieces, which allows him to kick out to the sides, but I wouldn't recommend pushing this too far, as you may scrape some of the orange paint. We do get a rotation here at the thigh, double jointed knees, which can bend to a really nice degree depending on where you actually do bend them. So if you bring them to the back more, you get a slightly better range of motion. And finally here for the foot, this can pivot forwards and backwards, and of course rock side to side. So honestly, this guy is everything that I could have dreamed of and more. I'm so satisfied with him, and being one of those guys that were rather skeptical about him being a commander class, I'm so glad that I decided to pick him up, as he really is one of my favorite War for Cybertron figures, and honestly I haven't been able to put him down ever since I picked him up. So accessories and special features. Well, one of the special features that we get is of course that you can in fact open this torso cavity to reveal the Matrix of Leadership, which too has been detailed and sculpted perfectly well. You can see all of that interior detailing that we've got going on, as well as the nice silver. This can in fact be removed, although I will be honest and say that it's very difficult to actually take it out, but it can be removed. And you can see we've got some nice sculpt work. We can bring in the Matrix blast effect that it comes with, but I'll be honest and say this is a little dainty when in comparison to the one we actually got with the 86 figure. I think that this particular light effect couldn't light my bathroom, let alone the darkest hour, so it would have been nice if they could have just included that original version that we got with the Studio Series figure and perhaps just up the scale slightly, but it's not a bad effect. You can see some nice sculpt work. I will mention, however, that for some weird reason, they have decided to cast this out of a lot firmer plastic, meaning that these pieces can actually break. You can see here I've got some nasty stress marks where this does actually insert, so I wish they maybe could have used a slightly more pliable plastic for this. But we also do get included a blaster for Rodimus. Now this does come stacked. For vehicle mode you are supposed to extend it and it will lock into place, but I think the sculpt and detail on this looks terrific. A really nicely looking sculpted piece. I maybe would have liked to have seen this actually separate, but that really is just a nitpick if anything. You can see some awesome sculpt work there on the side, and he can hold it, as they have designed the hands very similarly to some of the other articulated fingers, where the paw is essentially sculpted here where the thumb is, and that just holsters in there. And of course you can wrap the fingers around and have him also grip onto this paw and have him double hand this awesome looking blaster, and that's where we can bring in some of the blast effects. So we get these really awesome blue energy effects, which are essentially Siege, Omega Supreme, and I also believe Skylink's effects, but this time cast out of an amazing transparent blue. They really do look terrific. You can take some of these and just port them onto the top, and that is really cool. Awesome energy effect. And then one of the coolest accessories that I think he comes with is the Sword of Primus. Now this is something they didn't have to include, but I'm super glad they did. The entire blade's been sculpted really well and done in a metallic silver. I'm not a huge fan of this peg. It does break up the sculpt and merely only acts so that you can actually store this on the back of the figure just like this. And honestly, I'm not going to do this, and I'm pretty certain many of you won't either, so I wish for the sake of the sculpt they would have just skipped this and given us a solid piece. But this does insert into the figure's hands like so you just simply snap it into place, wrap the fingers around, and there you've got Rodimus Prime with the Sword of Primus, looking absolutely fantastic. And showing you how he can integrate here with the trailer, so it's mainly just this turret section. You can see this thing here is actually really big, especially compared to Rodimus, but you are supposed to just take the hands here, wrap them over the handle sections, And the way this thing here can actually pose, you can get some really cool, very expressive dynamic displays with this, making him look as if though he's raining hell down on the Decepticons. We can bring in some of those blue energy effects and just put them there into the tip of the gun, which looks super, super awesome. Or you could in fact actually take this, flip the 5mm peg out, bring the trailer back in and put it into there. And there you would have Rodimus on the trailer, much like the Masterpiece figure, looking so, so awesome. I really do think this is an awesome set, if you haven't guessed already by this review. Size comparison wise, here we have Kingdom Rodimus Prime compared next to Kingdom Leader Galvatron, and as he really should be, he's a little smaller when in comparison to Galvatron, but I was quite surprised to see he's a lot weightier than this figure. So as mentioned, you really are paying for parts count and conversion where it comes to Rodimus Prime. So once again, I guess he couldn't really fit into that leader price point, as he's a lot better than even Earthrise Optimus, which we shall bring in for a comparison right now. You can see here the differences between these guys. Rodimus is just a lot bigger, a lot bulkier, a lot broader, and feels a lot heftier. And the conversions are also way off. This one here is a lot more complex when in comparison to Earthrise Optimus. So just for a head-to-head, I think the scale between these two is pretty spot on as well. They've done a very good job. Both leaders, both primes, and both looking fantastic. And here for that 1986 size comparison shot, we've got Rodimus Prime compared next to a mixture of Studio Series figures as well as War for Cybertron figures, and I think for the most part he scales pretty decently with all of these, being a little shorter than Kingdom Ultra Magnus, as of course he's not quite leader as far as scale is concerned, as you saw with Galvatron. Rodimus Prime comparison time, and you've got the new Kingdom version compared next to that Power of the Primes release, which was of course released in a much later wave when they didn't even really factor scale into the equation, so he's always going to be a lot bigger than our Kingdom figure. But as far as the complexity to the conversion is concerned, as well as the refinements that they've managed to make to this figure, it is leaps and bounds better. Albeit the Power of the Primes figure did have to have that evolution gimmick and was pretty decent for its time. There's no denying that there certainly is a new Prime in town. And for another comparison, here we've got the Studio Series 86 Hot Rod, just so you can see the differences as far as their scale is concerned. This guy certainly is a lot bigger. And you can see here from the side, there are some similarities where some of the parts do end up. The back of the legs look very similar, the fins on the back as well as the backpack look quite similar, and of course the smokestacks, but they're all design traits which are carried over from one another. But I really do think that Rodimus is superb looking, and it's a great evolution from one of the best mainline figures to now the newest best mainline figure. So overall, as you could probably guess throughout this video, I really love this figure. I think he's awesome. He's probably, at least to me, my best mainline War for Cybertron figure that I currently own in the collection. Of course, you're paying that Commander class price point, and in the past, you were mainly paying that in order to accommodate scale, and considering Rodimus is slightly shorter, I can certainly see that turning many people off, but you are paying for engineering. This guy is leaps and bounds more complex than pretty much any of the other Leader, Voyager, and Deluxe figures that we've gotten in previous lines up until this particular point, and he also comes with the trailer, which is really well built, pretty well engineered as well, considering that it has got a fair amount packed into it. And this guy also comes with quite a good array of accessories, including the Matrix, the Sword of Primus, the blaster, various different blast effects, that huge turret. I really think this guy's awesome. I thought some of the steps of the conversion were very surprising, such as all of the various different twists and turns that go on in the torso. The compression of the wheels on the top of the shoulders honestly took me by surprise, and you've also got subtle details such as all of those little hinges that move out of the way in order to accommodate articulation, transformation, etc. So this guy for me is a must-have. For any of you who are War for Cybertron completionists, you have to pick this guy up in the collection. I think that he actually might be my favourite Commander class, which is very surprising considering that when I actually saw his initial reveal, I wasn't all that impressed, as I thought he's a lot smaller than the previous figures that have come before him, and he just isn't worth it. But getting him in hand, I've had a complete 360 turn on the guy, and he really is one of my favourite figures to date. He looks awesome. He's literally a mini masterpiece figure. I would actually go as far as saying that he is a masterpiece figure, just shrunken down to a slightly smaller mainline scale, as he really is pretty much flawless for the most part. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do let me know down in the comment section below. I also have a transformation tutorial coming up over on the channel fairly shortly on how to convert him from robot to vehicle and then vehicle to robot. So for those of you looking for that conversion, please hit that subscribe button as well as the bell notification so you guys can be notified as soon as that video goes out. Also be sure to let me know on what you thought of both the figure and the review itself. Will you be adding this figure to your collection? Do you think as highly of it as I have stated in this video, or do you disagree with me? Do you think that he should have been a leader class at max, or maybe even a Voyager? I thank you all for watching, and until my next review, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.